Eskimo Indian Olympics have been held every year since 1961. Phone books not involved, but these are more toys for you to play with. Voila, voila. And I'm afraid you're going to have to prepare to get a little bit sticky. These lubed rods here, which are very icky.
Trying to get me to do this for years. I'm sorry, Stephen, but this contravenes my super injunction.
All you have to do is try and work out what the sports are in the World Eskimo Indian Olympics, as they're now officially called.
Well, that's obviously...
You can play it with Brian. It's actually... It's each one of these games is like most games, is there really basically to hone the skills you need for the environment in which you live.
Is this a two-person game?
It's a two-person game.
Is it fire?
Is it fire?
No, leave the string for the moment and grab the stick and... It's all right. It's very
helpful. I think it is.
No, you have to do it with your hands. No. That's it.
Like that.
And it's the one who can basically, without twisting or jerking, the one who can get the stick off the other.
Oh, Christ, I've got no chance.
Sean won. There you can see them doing it. Go on, have a go. There you go.
Right, this time you're going on the floor.
There you go.
Now, you're holding my hand there, Brian.
Oh, sorry.
That's it.
I've only got
No twisting or jerking.
I think you're on one side. You're on one side.
My hands are too big.
Here we go. Can you go?
Oh, look, eagle.
No twisting or jerking. And we have a string game yet to play, which is another game.
Right. Let me guess, we have to wrap it round our balls.
No, you don't. You do have to wrap it around an organ.
Oh, that's it.
Fortunately, not an organ of generation. An auditory organ, one of your ears. Each wraps it round the ear. You wrap the other end down your ear, and you pull. Be brave.
Put it round your ear.
It's a pain endurance test.
I'll go around the other ear.
Oh, look what happened to his ear. I don't want that to happen to my ear.
As you can see from the photograph, it's endurance and pain are really the... you've got glasses on, of course. I don't know if that helps.
They've got quite springy ears.
Have you got springy ears?
Springy ears.
Is that an advantage or a disadvantage?
I think it's a disadvantage because they're very, very springy.
Yeah. No, whoa! I declare the winner there, Brian. Who's been winning on your side?
Yeah. He's got it
You've turned
tied
it
in
into a
his hair.
plait.
I cheated, look, I tied it.
You definitely cheating. These are official sports of the Eskimo Olympics. What variety of lettuce did they serve on board the Titanic?
Iceberg.
Well, bless you for...
I took one for the team, as it were.
You did take one for the team, no. The iceberg lettuce had been developed in Pennsylvania, but it was not available in Europe until many years later.
Rosso,
the answer is we don't know.
Oh.
We do know there were 700
So
heads of
close to
lettuce
doing
on
it.
board.
Make them sound like heads of state.
I know, doesn't
The
it?
most grand of all the lettuce, the head of lettuce.
Why did they only have 700 lettuce? Because how many people were on
I don't know,
the Titanic?
maybe... Either they'd already eaten that much and that's how much was saved, or they just didn't order that. Maybe,
Well, they saved the lettuce, but not the people. 1,500 people died on that ship.
Sorry.
Okay, get the lettuce for crying out loud.
I think I misread my card. It was, hold the front page, 7,000 heads of lettuce.
One of the bloody things sank then. It was full of lettuce. Before they even started.
Lettuces float.
But
Well, why did it sink then? What is wrong with these people?
What did the Pope's librarian say when he first saw the rings around the planet Saturn?
They initially thought the planet had ears.
Ah, yes.
That was Galileo. I mean, I don't think he actually thought it had ears, because Galileo was a genius.
No, he thought like a jug. Ears in the sense of a jug ears, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, that's Galileo, who was sensible.
They are
I'm
remarkable.
talking about the librarian of the Pope.
Do you know...
He genuinely believed that it was possible that after Christ's ascension into heaven, the rings of Saturn were where he put his foreskin.
Ah, yes.
Now, you may think, oh, I'm trying to mock the church. This is all nonsense. But Christ, of course, was a Jewish boy, and like all Jewish boys, on the 8th day of his birth, he was
They're
circumcised.
50,000 miles across.
They
Imagine
didn't know.
the size.
They weren't aware of that.
I need a peg
Jesus,
to hang
I've
this massive foreskin on.
I've got new respect for Jesus.
That's some girth.
His name was Leo Alatius, and his essay was called De Praeputio Domini Nostri Jesu Christi Diatriba, a diatribe, a discussion concerning the prepuce, foreskin, of our Lord Jesus Christ.
This is how to interest teenagers in astronomy. this is how quick I've been missing.
Is it out there as a relic?
Well, like all the relics, there are 18 places who claim to have the
Really?
one true holy foreskin.
Oh, they really?
of Christ, yes. They are. Catherine of Siena was one of the weirder of the saints. She believed that Christ gave her his foreskin as a wedding ring in their mystical marriage.
What a gift.
After her death, her hand was cut off and became a relic with its invisible foreskin on it as a ring. She was an extreme anorexic, a peculiar woman. She also actively sought out degrading experiences. She once drank a cupful of cancerous pus from a woman who had abused her. So naturally...
Has she appeared on Mock the Week?
But now, more importantly, more significantly, how were the rings around Saturn actually formed?
I'm going to play the card there.
You are right. You're a true scientist. The fact is, nobody does really know, do they? There are two sort of major... Well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
I didn't copy, I wasn't copying.
Yeah. There's a Socratic acceptance of the limits of one's own knowledge, and there's ignorance. I'm not saying which is which. No, quite right. There are two major theories. I think there are two major theories. Is that
It's
right?
thought there could be a moon
Yes.
that was either disrupted, so something hit it and fragmented it. Although they are almost pure water ice, which, come to think of it now, sat here, makes the moon theory a bit unlikely, doesn't it? Because moons are made of rock. So actually...
So the other
But
theory
that
would
is
be
what-
that it would be something to do with the formation of the planet itself, that
Yeah.
something spun off it in some way and then achieved a stable orbit around and then formed these...
God
And they
spilled his
don't
drink.
coalesce together. They're held, the structures are held by the other moons. There are over 60 moons of Saturn.
Are they part of the rings or entirely separate from the rings?
Some of them are inside small moons called shepherd moons, which go around and you get rings in between those moons. And then it's got moons outside the rings, which affect the structure of the rings. So they orbit outside and affect it.
Quite
so it's a
big
very
moons?
complex...
Life-carrying moons?
structure. Well, there's a moon called Enceladus, which is about as big as Britain. It's a very small moon. But it has fountains of ice rising up out of the surface. And it's thought that means that there may well be liquid water beneath the surface, so pockets of liquid water. Everywhere on Earth that you find water, you find life.
Of all these moons, like, this is the one thing I wanted to ask you. Of all these moons, which one's most likely to be the home to Ewoks?
It would be
Yeah.
Titan.
Titan,
Has got
yeah.
a thicker atmosphere than the Earth. So you'd need to be furry.
Good answer. We just have to destroy the one that has Jar Jar Binks on it, though. That's David Tennant played Hamlet at the RSC. What did Tchaikovsky play? What?
Tchaikovsky, being the composer, Tchaikovsky.
Was he in the cast, Tchaikovsky?
He was.
Peter Ilyich.
Not Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky, the Russian composer. Another musician called Tchaikovsky. He was also a pianist, a rather startling and amazing pianist, actually. Most eccentric pianist.
Richard Stilgoe.
No, I've already told you his name. It was Tchaikovsky.
Tchaikovsky.
Were you saying that he played Richard Stilgoe?
Yes.
He blew into Richard Stilgoe and a noise came out the other end.
You're putting him in the past tense, so I am assuming he may have shuffled off his mortal coil.
To quote Hamlet,
To quote.
or indeed.
And that will be the only quote. That's it now. I've blown all my quotes.
Well, you've done damn well. It's a good start. Yes.
So
Yeah.
if he's dead...
He was dead.
It was... so he's not
The
alive.
skull?
So he's a skull.
Yes, he played the skull. Here we don't have the real skull there, but that's what a skull looks like. He was a very passionate Shakespearean. That is the real thing there, was Tchaikovsky, and he bequeathed it to the Royal Shakespeare Company, asking that it be used in productions of Hamlet for the part of... Do you remember the character? Whose skull it is that Hamlet...
Is it Yorick?
Yorick,
Yes. Yorick,
exactly.
yes.
Poor
Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio, fellow of infinite
Yes,
jest.
well, they went, alas, but wait a minute, this is Tchaikovsky, isn't it? He can play a tune on his teeth.
There was quite a bit of trouble. There were health and safety issues. There had to be a
Really?
human tissue license had to be ordered in order for him to appear on stage.
Did they cut his head off? I mean, presumably, so he's gone, when I die, I'd like my skull to be used by the RSC. But someone's got to saw it
Yes,
off and then
and-
rot it down a bit.
The funeral directors were rather loath to do this. They thought it might be illegal, but they had to get clearance. And David Tennant every day held it in his hand. Tchaikovsky would have been very pleased. That's what he wanted, after all.
Yeah.
There he is looking at
Look
it.
at that.
Yeah.
A tramp yesterday.
You hope they've had to dirty it up again.
Oh, they very much, yes.
So that's not just a bit of the guy that's still clean.
There's a little face still on there he's got to wash off.
It's a long time since I've seen Hamlet, but because it's such a well-known bit,
Yeah.
you don't really question what happens in it. And it's an odd thing to do, to pick up a bloke's skull from a graveyard.
It's someone he knew,
and then to sort of go, alas, you know, I knew him well. You, rather than going, I feel a bit weird having picked up his skull. Because I knew him.
That's sort of what he's saying. He's saying, you know, it's ridiculous. I knew this man. I would sit on his lap when I was a boy, and he's just went to set the table on a raw. And he looks at him and says, so where are your jokes now?
Yeah.
You know,
Not so funny now.
It is one of the great contemplations of death and mortality. And it must be even weirder when you're doing it to a real person like that. David Tennant presumably knew the story that he was doing it to this chap who wanted it to be a symbol of death.
It's going to be like I'm a Celebrity, isn't it? Agents are going to put their acts down to have their skulls used in that. Yeah, oh yeah, no, I'll get you your skull. You'll be in Shakespeare one day.
It'd be awful, wouldn't it, though, if for your whole life you'd wanted to be an actor and it hadn't really worked out, and so you bequeathed your skull and it was used in a major production of Hamlet, and then all the reviewers said, I don't know, Yorick felt a bit stilted. So he'd ruined that scene, really.
The 2001 census revealed to be the 4th largest religion in Britain.
Oh, this is going to go off, but I'm going to say Jedi.
No, the 4th largest number of people put Jedi as their religion, but they were not counted as a religion. Those who put Jedi were put in the box no religion.
They were ruled out for being silly, weren't they?
Well, basically ruled out for being silly. The 4th biggest religion is in fact.
So,
in
wait, so
Britain.
Christian's got to be top one still. Muslim second.
Yeah.
Sikh, Hindu.
Yes, 4th is Sikhs. There were 14 Scots who put Sith.
Do you know they when they released a press release about this? It's like something like 37,000 or something.
Yes, it was
37,000 people
huge,
put Jedi
more than
down.
that,
They released
390,000.
the actual official census form said. What was the number again? Sorry.
390,000.
390,000 was released as 390,000 Jedi. There are.
Which animal has the most genes?
Des Lynam. Jeremy Clarkson. he's
Jeremy
got loads.
Clarkson. That's unfortunate.
It's to do with the age, it's not to do with the complexity.
Yes, it may be.
Jeremy Clarkson.
Because some plant has got loads more genes than us.
Yes, there are quite a few things that have a lot more genes than that. The fruit fly has many more genes than we do. But this is actually just a little water flea.
And don't they think that's because of the age, that it's just been around for so long, it's mutated all these different times?
Yeah, 8,000 more genes than the human genome, which is quite a lot. And it doesn't do much, it lies around.
It
Very
carries its own umbrella.
It carries its own umbrella. And it's a very important part of the food chain in water. It's eaten by fish. And...
You can imagine the fish going, you can taste those extra genes.
Yes. What What variety of lettuce did they serve on board the Titanic?
Iceberg.
Well, bless you for...
I took one for the team, as it were.
You did take one for the team, no. The iceberg lettuce had been developed in Pennsylvania, but it was not available in Europe until many years later. The answer is we don't know. We do know there were 700 heads of lettuce on board.
Make them sound like heads of state.
I know, doesn't it?
The most grand of all the lettuce, the head of lettuce.
Why did they only have 700 lettuce? Because how many people were on the Titanic?
Maybe either they'd already eaten that much and that's how much was saved, or they just didn't order that. Maybe
They saved the lettuce, but not the people. 1,500 people died on that ship.
Sorry.
Okay, get the lettuce for crying out loud.
I think I misread my card. It was, hold the front page, 7,000 heads of lettuce.
One of the bloody things sank then. It was full of lettuce. Before they even started.
Lettuces float.
But...
Well, why did it sink then? What is wrong with these people?
How do you get a goose interested in volleyball? Joe.
I like to reply with the question, how do you get anyone interested?
I believe the removal of clothes is part of the... isn't
That's
it?
beach volleyball, though, isn't it?
Yeah, no. Well, when I say in volleyball, really, I should be using an indefinite article. There's a great difference between a goose being interested in volleyball and a goose being interested in a volleyball.
Ah, make one out of goose food.
That would do it. Oddly enough, you don't need to do that. If their natural egg is light blue and flecked with grey, scientists have found that you can make the eggs bigger and bigger and make them really bright blue with great big black polka dots, and they'll sit on those instead. In other words, there's no upper limit.
It's about the shape and the colour, not the size.
Yeah, it's a bit like us. We should eat enough food to keep ourselves alive, but we have no upper limit in the amount. We'll have another bar of chocolate and another one, and we end up looking like me. And we shouldn't.
Is that why you're wearing the Cadbury's livery?
Hoping for a freebie, as always. No, it is, evolutionarily speaking, the bigger the egg, the more likely it is to want to sit on it because it's more likely to be a healthy, larger chick.
They'll be thrilled. This is going to be the most amazing
Exactly,
goose ever.
that's the thing. And so you can literally go up inside, they'll sit on a volleyball because that's a kind of flaw in nature, if you like. I have to say, we have to include ourselves in this, don't we? I mean, there are certain things we need, but we don't need in excess, like sugar and fat and sex, and yet we spend a lot of our time eating chocolates and doing things on the internet.
Sounds like my perfect holiday, that does. It's brilliant, doesn't it? Sugar, fat and sex, yes, But we've got the awareness of that we do that.
We at least have the awareness.
The goose sitting on the volleyball isn't thinking, oh, this is a bit much. The world doesn't need giant geese.
You're right. We have the extra curse of consciousness that we're fools. They're just fools without knowing it. It's called supernormal stimuli, and it seems to exist in a lot of species, actually. Yeah. Anyway, geese like their eggs, the bigger the better. And they just don't know where to stop, which may seem stupid, but name an intelligent bird. Yes.
Me.
What did Mussolini want Italians to eat to make them big and strong? Oh. He had a national propaganda day for this foodstuff, and he wanted Italians really to take to it in a big way.
Was it a vegetable? Some sort of...
Not quite a vegetable.
Nuts?
Not nuts, no.
Right.
It's something Italians do eat. They have a specialist dish.
Ravioli?
Risotto. Risotto, which is made from...
Rice.
Rice, exactly. And Mussolini wanted to kick Italians off the habit of eating pasta and to get them into the habit of eating rice. And Italians didn't take kindly for this at all. And so here are some paddy fields, some Italian ladies growing rice.
And singing while they do it.
And singing as they did it. And rather extraordinary, he had on his side the Futurists. You probably know about the Futurist movement, which was a bit like...
Not yet.
The Dadaists and the... not yet.
Very good!
Still almost too quick. Yeah. That was brilliant. Yeah, but the Futurists were an art movement, and they were pretty witty. And Filippo Tommaso Marinetti, who was one of the great Futurists, he said that pasta made Italians lethargic, pessimistic and sentimental. And this caused outrage, as I'm sure was his intention. He opened his own restaurant and he had some extraordinary dishes. I mean, way ahead. I mean, ahead of Heston Blumenthal or anybody like that. Here, this is my favourite one. It's called aero food, all right? Pieces of olive, fennel and kumquat are eaten with the right hand, while the left hand caresses various pieces of sandpaper, velvet and silk. All the while, the diner is blasted with a giant fan and sprayed with the scent of carnation to the music of Wagner. Isn't that a dish? I think somebody should have the guts and the wit to open a Futurist restaurant again. There are other ones. There was chicken fiat. A chicken is roasted with a handful of ball bearings inside. When the flesh has fully absorbed the flavour of the mild steel balls, chicken is served with a garnish of whipped cream. And there's one called the excited pig. A whole salami skinned is cooked in strong espresso coffee and flavoured with eau de cologne.
I think you've been to motorway services.
What do you call an Irishman with no nipples? That's Richard Harris, of course.
In A Man Called Horse.
God. A Man Called Horse.
It's a great movie, isn't it?
Things.
It seemed extreme when I first saw that, but now there's guys in Camden Town that have that done.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be an Edinburgh show now, wouldn't it? Yeah. Part of the festival.
He deserved 10 times worse than that for writing MacArthur Park.
Oh, yes. Cake left out in the rain.
Yeah, someone left the cake in the rain. Who cares?
My nan left the cake out in the rain. It would have absorbed all the rain. She made a very dry cake.
He didn't actually write, to be fair, to Richard Harris. It was written by Judy Webb, but he did sing it, and he's guilty of that. But this question isn't about Richard Harris. This is about Irishmen with no nipples. It seems bizarre, but there is a real historical point of interest here. What could an Irishman never be if he had no nipples?
Symmetric.
We're going back to the past. Symmetric. We're going back into the past in Ireland. It's a very peculiar thing, but part of your way of showing loyalty to your sovereign, if you were an Irish subject in the ancient days of the Irish kings, was you had to suck their nipples. Right? So, and you may say, well, OK, but what kind of person doesn't have nipples? There would be fights, contests, and people would apply, as it were, to be King of Ireland. And if they were found not suitable, they would have their nipples cut off, which meant they could never be King of Ireland.
Sorry, they did it like Britain's Got Talent.
Basically, yes.
This is how Britain's Got Talent should just tweak it so
Wouldn't
it's
it?
the same.
It would be quite something. But there was Old Crochan Man, which was one of the peat bog discoveries. And he was so well preserved that when he was discovered, it wasn't archaeologists or museums or anthropologists who got in touch with it, it was the police. But in fact, it was from between 300-odd to 100-odd BC that this person had died.
So the chances of getting...
well preserved.
You would describe that as a cold case.
No, yeah, you would.
The chance of getting a conviction...
But he was so well preserved, people said, oh, my God, you know, here's this recently killed body. But he was found with nipples pinched and cut off. So he appears to have been someone who basically was deprived ritually of his attribute of kingship before being killed. So there you are. That seems to be the case. But there are extra points if you can tell me the national colour of Ireland.
Well, this feels like a trap.
It does indeed.
That's the flag, but that's not necessarily an indication of what the national colour
Blue.
might
National
be.
colour.
Blue is the right answer.
Get in.
Very good. Well done. Yeah. The fact is, of course, it's changed. Now everybody thinks it's green, and green is where one paints themselves green in Chicago and New York for St. Patrick's Day. But St. Patrick's colour was blue, and it was known as St. Patrick's blue. The coat of arms of Ireland, you may see, is a shield of a harp against a ground of St. Patrick's blue. And the Irish Guards are distinct because of the blue in their bearskins. So blue was always really the colour of Ireland until really... It was in 1798 when they had one of their many rebellions, and green then became a symbol of Irish nationalism and sort of took over from blue. Sucking a king's nipples was a gesture of submission in ancient Ireland, so if you lost yours, you couldn't be king. In what way is Iceland's most recent volcano similar to Genghis Khan?
I think they're both shag nasties. Genghis Khan apparently has shagged everything that moves, and that he is the father and mother of all populations in Europe and Asia, so he shagged everything that moves. and the volcano, of course, has spurted out, had an orgasm of ammonia, and has fertilised Europe. Good answer.
have to be brutally honest and say that's not what's on my card.
Oh, shit!
But if there was no such thing as science, you'd be right. I think I know what it is.
Yes, go on.
I think, obviously, that volcano stopped lots of transport going on.
Yes.
He must have stopped something happening, which the volcano stopped happening.
You're in this right here. The odd thing is it's both very beneficial, especially at the moment. It's a thing we talk about a lot. Now, that volcano poured out, they reckon, between 150,000 and 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide. So there's a huge amount of carbon came out as a result of it. But, if you remember, no one flew for however long it was, and the lack of flying saved 3 million tons. So, in fact, it was a huge offset of carbon. And in the case of Genghis Khan, he slaughtered his way across the world and had the largest empire the world has ever seen. 4 times bigger than that of Alexander, twice the size of the Roman Empire. And he killed about 40 million people. And the result was there was so little farming that the forests grew back. And you can time a huge benefit to the world from his slaughter. But that's rather extraordinary, isn't it?
So what do we have to pronounce?
Now, yes, that's what I was... How did you know that I was going to ask that as a supplementary question?
I thought you already did.
Oh, did I already say it?
Oh, that or I read it off the
you read it off the audio? You great big cheater!
There.
I would now like you to pronounce the name of the volcano, and it's written up there for you.
Oh, God alive. You're prawn rings.
You should have been a newsreader.
With your accent, you've got the best chance.
It looks a bit like that, yeah? Any thoughts?
Ye Jaff Yally Jockcrow. Yeah.
Brian,
I think woman just got
you may have set it off again by doing this.
Yeah. I think the umlaut changes it, doesn't it? Those 2 little dots.
The 2 dots.
Yeah. And I think, actually, the way you're supposed to pronounce it is... Hutch.
If only.
It changes it.
Apparently, it's Eyjafjallajökull. Leiokodl.
And is that translated big smoky bastard?
Yes.
You will go by ferry.
Basically the answer. Who had to return to their birthplace for the census?
This is going to be one of those things where we say Joseph and Mary, and it isn't Joseph and Mary because that isn't what you It isn't that at all, because that we don't...
Woods.
Is it? It's not. Clever. Always been one step behind. The story is given in one of the Gospels, Luke, where it says that Caesar Augustus, if you remember, in those days issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. And we know this is just simply poppycock.
The dates are all over the place, isn't it?
And you know, there was never a census of the entire Roman world. And there is also absolutely no truth in the fact that you had to return to the place of your birth in order to complete a census, if there were a census. There is only one reason why Luke would want you to think that Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem to give birth.
To fulfil the prophecy.
To fulfil the prophecy is the point. Is that in the Old Testament it says the Messiah will be born from the stem of Jesse. And that means... what is the stem of Jesse? Do you know what...
There's so many answers, I don't even know where to begin. What time is this broadcast?
King David, in the Bible, was David, son of Jesse. And in the various prophecies, they say the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem from the stem of Jesse, i.e. from the family.
But it's all about Joseph. And Mary, supposedly, is a virgin. So the stem of Jesse's got...
Nothing to
do with it. I know the whole thing doesn't make sense.
What?
Which is obviously not. I know, don't let me for a minute.
I spent a lot of time on this as a kid. And
Yeah,
don't tell me now. Don't let the scales fall from my eyes now.
It doesn't make any sense anyway. If you were going to count people, I mean, say we had the census here, I'd have to go back to Copenhagen. That would just be ridiculous.
Exactly, that's the point. He's only put in there in order to get him to be born in Bethlehem. And Luke is the one of all the Gospel writers who's most determined to fit in all the prophecies.
And it wasn't laterally, and like a kind of a Bethlehem tourist board type thing where they said, is there any chance you could place this story here? we got the guys with the relics ready to go. The minute you shift it to us, like we can. Like, you know, like Santa Claus, Lapland versus Santa Claus North Pole.
Yes.
Right? This is probably exactly an excellent parallel to draw between the two things. But Lapland have just decided that's where Santa lives.
And, of course, the real St. Nicholas came from Turkey.
Of course.
And
lived in the North Pole.
The things we've really been cheated on are the really interesting books that should have been in the Bible. As you probably know, the Bible was assembled over a long period of time, well after the birth of Christ.
Well, it's about 300 years later they got together.
There were the constant conferences going on, deciding on which bits of scripture they should include in an official Bible. And there are some absolutely wonderful ones about the infancy of Christ, which I would like to share with you. And wouldn't this make you more interested in Jesus? This is one here. They're the infancy Gospels, which were rejected from the final cut of the Bible.
Is this like an Easter egg, ironically, on a DVD?
Mary dismounted from her beast and sat down with the child Jesus in her bosom. And there were with Joseph 3 boys and Mary a girl going on the journey along with them. And lo, suddenly there came forth from the cave many dragons. And when the children saw them, they cried out in great terror. Then Jesus went down from the bosom of his mother and stood on his feet before the dragons, and they adored Jesus and thereafter retired.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's great. No, wouldn't you have paid more attention in Sunday school if there had been more of those?
And you're reading that to us in your Harry Potter voice as well.
I'm sorry, that goes with the territory.
The Bible meets Puff the Magic Dragon.
Yes.
Fantastic.
That is typical. Oh, that lizard. Oh, that's a dragon. That's a dragon. Right?
Yes. Who first cracked the Enigma code? Yes.
Was it the Poles?
Top man. Absolutely right. You're a good soul. Yep. There's a general feeling that we did all the work, but in fact it was a Pole in 1932, as early as that, who first cracked how an Enigma machine worked. But in the late 1930s, the Germans changed the way they worked, so that I think there was something like 364 billion possible settings each day to the daily code. Now, that's not something you could guess. But the first one to crack it in the beginning to see how it worked was a young Polish mathematician called Marian Rejewski. And if you ever go to Bletchley Park, and I do urge you to do so, there is a splendid statue to him. And
have they got a good shop there?
They have a very nice shop. They also have a museum of computing, which I know would excite you almost.
Oh, indeed.
Indeed, I can...
Already moist.
I mean, it is well established. The work on Enigma did do a great deal to hasten the end of the war. Eisenhower estimated that it shortened the war by 2 years, which is hundreds of thousands of lives. So it was an extraordinarily important thing that these boffins got together. But how do you think they were first brought together at Bletchley Park? What was the first move the government made to assemble the boffins?
Singles club.
It was almost that. It was a telegraph crossword competition. Especially fiendish telegraph crossword. And the winners were sent letters saying, you might be our kind of chap. But anyway, they then soon became aware that having people who knew that cart horse was an anagram of orchestra was not going to win them the war. They needed really great mathematical minds.
It's when the world changed, isn't it?
It's when the world changed.
It'll be fascinating conundrums that the Nazis will set us.
But,
we'll have to find clues and follow them. No, you just need a supercomputer.
But fortunately, there was a man ready for it. It just happened to be that history had thrown up a quite brilliant mathematician called Alan Turing, who was at Cambridge at the time. There he is. He's considered the father of computing, one of the truly great men of his time. And you may remember Gordon Brown making an impassioned but far too late apology on behalf of the British government for his terrible death. He was persecuted for his homosexuality and chemically castrated and then committed suicide by eating a poisoned apple. And there are many to this day who believe that Apple computers named their apple with the bite out of it in honour of Alan Turing, the father of computing. And I was in a position to ask one of the founders, Steve Jobs, and he said it isn't true, but God, we wish it were. It's just a coincidence, but they're very proud that people think it might be, because he was a simply extraordinary man. But the real fiendish thing was not Enigma, it was called Lorentz. And for Lorentz was used between German high command and Hitler himself, basically. And Lorentz was unbelievably difficult. And for that, Turing and his team built what really was the world's first computer. It was called Colossus. And it was way ahead of its time. It was quite extraordinary.
It was all a complete sort of national secret until very recently, wasn't it? Or quite recently.
Absolutely. There is Bletchley Park. And it is open to the public. I'm a big advocate for it, so I make no apology for banging its drum. It's a great place.
It's an interesting choice that we took as a nation, though, you know, during the Second World War, which was an expensive experience for us and left us bankrupt. But out of it, we had basically invented the computer, and we decided to make it a secret.
Yes.
Rather than, in any sense, attempting to monetize it.
Actually, we gave the secret of Colossus to the CIA.
Oh, superb.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
I know.
That's an excellent move.
It was.
No one will be needing that.
But there's a great memo, because there are a lot of people in the British government who thought, what are these people in faintly damp tweed with pipes and glasses doing, writing on bits of paper here? And there's quite a big budget. I mean, what are they doing? And Churchill had a look round, and the fellow explained to him what they were doing, and then there's a very famous memo in Churchill's hand that just says, give them what they want. It's fantastic, that, isn't it?
What can I just ask, and you may not be able to answer this, but what was the nature of the Enigma code? Was it mathematical or was
Yes. I mean, don't ask me to give you the precise details. I'm really no expert. But it was a purely physical, mechanical device, but it had so many different rotors that had so many different angles and positions that there were hundreds of billions of permutations. It was our job was to intercept or work out what the code word of the day was, and then we could translate the messages. It was all very odd. But they were very lazy. It relied on Germans making mistakes by using the names of their dogs and things. So a lot of intelligence was gathered about the people in naval intelligence in particular, about what their dogs, their girlfriends, their addresses and things like that, because it's a bit like passwords, you know.
I'm beginning to think that people will be able to hack into my John Lewis account now.
Not named after your
It's
dog,
ironic.
surely.
They invented a computer and finished the war early, but the cyber war being waged by China will be the death of all of us.
Yeah, there is some... You know, the worry about it is, I mean, I was speaking to a man at Los Alamos, which is where they developed the nuclear bomb, and obviously the science now goes in other directions. They said they had something like 1 million attacks an hour on their sort of cyber front-end security. And I said, what, hackers? And they said, no, nations. Well, let's be honest, one nation. And I was interviewing him on camera, and I said, would it rhyme with Biner? And he said, it might well do. And I said, that's how many times they're battering on the doors of your security.
Well, they
said,
must do. They've got thousands of computers.
Absolutely, they're just
trying to work it out 24 hours a day.
And presumably we're attempting in our own befuddled way to do the same.
We've got a ZX80 on it 24.
Except when Wimbledon's on.
Yeah, we've got a crow that can get a tiny bucket out of a Perspex tube. Take that, China.
How long do the best hugs last?
20 seconds.
That's a very long hug. I would start getting embarrassed and restless if someone hugged me for 20 seconds, but...
Do you want to test that?
Yeah.
Do you want to test that?
Yeah, no, please. Oh, hello. Here we go.
That was lovely. Yep. I'm on the clock. I'm on the clock. Yep, I'm on the clock. That was... Oh, God, this is too long. It is really bad. It is really bad. This is too long. It is really bad. Oh, we're unembarrassed now.
Did you say I'm on the clock?
On the clock,
And lovely. That's got to be at least 20 seconds, and that was embarrassing.
That was very uncomfortable.
Yeah. No,
see if you can beat it.
I've been waiting years to do this.
Well, if you like jogging, I'm playing tiddlywinks and sod the lot of
Right. That was lovely. That was unusual. I wasn't expecting that response, but it was charming. You're both wearing very nice aftershave, by the way.
Hang on, do you want your watch back?
Would you like my aftershave?
Gorgeous aftershave. Now, there have been tests. It seems weird.
4 or 5 seconds.
Well, 3 seems to be the answer.
3 is the perfect time, you mean? Or...
It seems to be that there is a kind of inbuilt human moment, which is 3 seconds. If it's less than 3 seconds, it really is a bit kind of... Well, that wasn't really a proper hug. It was 2... 1, 2, 3. That's nice. It's just actually a rhythm that seems to be built in to the human race. This 3-second period is known as a moment, and it happens in a lot of the things we do. Don't say it.
I just can't wait for my great aunt to come round and give me a hug. It's all very nice, and I'll go, it was 4 seconds, you bitch. Next time you'll keep it tight or you don't come in. I think what spoils a hug is when the other person goes, and break.
Yes. Prince Albert invent?
Oh, a cock ring. The comb over.
There was bizarrely, there was something he actually did invent, which is not quite as intimate as the item of piercing jewellery that you referred to.
A cutlass.
No. He and Victoria married, they were very young, they were 20 years old, and she was very nervous, and she wrote a diary, as you may know, and it was quite an intimate diary, and she described the wedding night, the actual events, not the full physical details, but she described the experience as both gratifying and bewildering. Isn't that rather wonderful?
We've all been there.
So anyway, they enjoyed enough to have 9 children, and what he invented was a device that allowed them to lock the bedroom door from the bed, to give them marital privacy. Isn't that rather splendid? Oh. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Excuse me while I just...
Yeah. So, but he wore very tight trousers, and this myth grew up in the middle of the 20th century that he somehow anchored his penis to one side of his body or another by means of some sort of ring that was therefore able to pull it backwards so that it wasn't on show at parties because he was a Victorian and it would have been rude wearing such tight trousers. But there is no evidence for this. Captain Scott take to the Antarctic to keep his lads entertained?
A first edition of Razzle.
Yeah, because he was going to take strippers, but out there, so many clothes.
Yes.
He just sat there going, oh, come on.
It was for musical entertainment.
A gramophone.
There was a gramophone on the second one, but more extraordinarily...
Triangle.
No, much more extraordinarily.
A piano.
Not just a piano.
Hammond organ.
A player piano, a pianola. Oh. A pianola, you know, the kind that plays itself like so, with a piano roll.
God, I bet they were delighted.
I mean, they took
we used to have one of those, and you do it with your feet.
That's right, you power it with your pedals, and the punched paper goes through, and it plays itself like that.
I suppose they figured that out there it's so cold, you wouldn't want to be playing the piano, would you, with your fingers
enough,
out?
on one of his
and if you did have your gloves on, it'd be a right racket.
On one of his first expeditions, he took a real piano, only to discover that nobody on board could play. So when he went on the second one, this company were very pleased to furnish him with the pianola, being an exciting piece of modern technology, and 20 rolls. And on the final expedition, the one in which they all perished, another company got in and gave him another pianola with 250 rolls, each one being a different piece of music, of course. And he actually took it off the ship. It took real effort to get it on land to the first base camp, just so they could have music.
Yeah. Oh, they didn't drag it to the pole with them.
They didn't take it all the way to the pole. No.
That would be odd.
That would have been a bit silly.
Leave it there.
Yes.
You get there as loads of others. Amundsen's taken a whole band.
It was very interesting to put a kind of sad note to the story, was that, of course, Scott got there and he went on the known route, which was tough, going up the glaciers and so forth. But Amundsen, of course, went a different route and found it was easy, and he was lucky. So he got there days before Scott did.
And when Scott got there, of course, he discovered the Norwegian flag.
And when Scott got there, he saw the Norwegian flag. And then Scott, coming back, was depressed and so forth, and they all died gradually, one by one, etc. But Amundsen got back to Norway, and he was in the bath. And his wife came into the bathroom and said, Scott has died on the way back from the South Pole. And Amundsen said, he's beaten me.
Oh, really?
Yes, because he meant by dying, it was Scott of the Antarctic and not Amundsen of the Antarctic.
He just became a hero.
Well, he became a hero.
What he should have said was, can I have his piano?
Well, the one on the left of the photograph is the famous Oates, who, if you remember, was the one who sacrificed his life, who left the tent, said, maybe some time. Yeah, and there's Scott in the middle. Do you remember the rather moving the last words he wrote in his diary, which when they discovered...
We took risks, we knew we were taking them, and things have come out against us. Therefore, we have no reason to complain.
He ended with the words, for God's sake, look after our people.
Yeah.
What do the signal bars on your phone mean?
Well, it means how much signal you can...
Don't be scared.
Well, they mean how
how well
thing
you're
with the
receiving
speaking of sky that come
close
through,
to you.
and then not there, all gone.
You're getting
I need it in English, I'm afraid, in order to be able to give points.
Talkie power, all gone away. Sky no fly down in here.
Big bird in sky.
Yeah.
You're either connected
Go
or you're
away,
not
be
connected,
talking no
aren't you?
by.
Basically.
So
me here,
levels
not
of
now.
connectivity are a bit
Yes,
relevant.
the fact is, really, again, I would have accepted a nobody knows card. Too late now.
Me here, not
because
now.
basically, there is no standardisation between manufacturers and different handset makers have different ways of showing what is apparently a full signal, and we're all apparently really thrilled because, oh, look, I've got 5 bars going up. Absolutely meaningless.
Yeah. How many nobody knows questions are there in this tonight?
Nobody knows.
What I find really annoying is when you're talking to someone on the mobile phone and it cuts out, and then when they call you back again, they say, oh, don't know what happened then. In the past, I've always said, well, it must be you because I've got 5 bars, but now you're
you
telling
know. Exactly. I'm afraid that is... It is...
You've pulled the rug from under me, Stephen.
I'm sorry to do that, but that's one of the things we do on this show. Nobody knows quite what the signal bars on your phone really signify. Given the choice, what would be the next best thing to having a Nobel Prize winner in our audience tonight?
Dennis Leary had a great joke about the Nobel Peace Prize. He said, the Nobel Peace Prize, I'd kill for one of those.
That's very good. Now, there is a sort of serio-comic version of the Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh, it's the Ig Nobel Awards.
Yes. The Ig Nobel Prize is given to people who usually are genuine scientists who have conducted research, some of which is just a little bit weird. There, for example, we have on our left a woman who invented an emergency bra that could be torn apart and turned into a gas mask. And 2 gas masks, obviously. And there on the right is the inventor of the Ig Nobel Prize, Mr. Mark Abraham. And I'm proud to say that in our audience we have a winner of the Ig Nobel Prize, Professor Chris McManus. Are you there? There he is. Hey. Now, Professor McManus. They called you in the press the oddball professor. Perhaps you'd like to tell us the reason you won the Ig Nobel Prize.
Well, I got the prize in 2002 for some work that was done half a lifetime earlier in 1976.
Yes.
And the paper was published in the most prestigious of science journals, Nature, and it was called Scrotal Asymmetry in Man and in Ancient Sculpture.
So your work was looking at how male testicles were asymmetrical?
Precisely.
I've got an issue. Well, maybe you could help because you're an expert.
Well, perhaps I should examine you afterwards. It's probably easier.
I think I can explain it. One of mine is bigger than the other 2.
Very good. Now, here's one of the oddest things about Iceland is, well, I'll show you. Have a look at this. These are Icelandic. What do you reckon they are?
Legs.
Yes. If I were to tell you that those are empty, does that help?
Hollow leg.
Yeah.
Oh, they're Icelandic cock pants. Is it because, like, when you go out on the beach, everything shrinks? So you basically just put them on, and then it gives you a little bit of...
Just, yeah,
profile.
Are they a pair of trousers, a pair of ski pants?
They are a pair of trousers made of human skin.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh. They are on display at the Icelandic Museum of Witchcraft, which is an extraordinary place because Icelandic witchcraft is pretty odd. And what happens is you ask a friend, right, that when he dies, can you have his skin?
Can I have your legs?
And if he gives you permission, you then flay the skin below the waist, all of it completely in one piece, right? And you wear them as sort of tights, right? It gets weirder. You then have to steal from a widow a coin. And you put the coin inside the scrotal area, the sac there, which you see the whole thing is more or less complete.
If it's a blow.
With a written incantation. And then...
You open a bank.
And that's how the Icelandic economy works. Yes. Well, then apparently, well, sort of do, because then the scrotum apparently fills with money. So that's the incantation. They're sort of necropants. There is an official word for them.
Necropants.
Yeah, dead pants, yeah.
That's the sort of thing you see advertised at 3 o'clock in the morning. Eurosport. Do you want necropants?
The Icelandic name is Nabrok. Now, I've got a little task for you to do, a little Christmas party game. I've got these phone books here. And what's happened is they've been interleaved. That's all it is. There's no glue or anything. They've literally, like a pack of cards, one page inside another. So it's two...
It must have taken ages.
So it did. Our props people are very proud of their work. There you are.
We'll share.
All I want you to do, you've got ropes there, is just pull them apart. So you can take one each.
Can't be done.
Go on, pull them apart.
It can't be done.
Go on. There you go. Try. You can't, can you?
Be done.
You literally can't. It's quite extraordinary. Strong as Brian is...
Go on, try and pull, Brian, pull.
All it is...
Sean's alive!
How come your water wasn't spilt? That's magical.
Yes, it's an old trick. Me and Brian have been doing this trick for years.
But that is, I think, proof positive.
I'm trying to sit on the top of my tipped-up chair.
A man as strong as Brian, he may be able to pull Sean off his chair, but it can't be done. In fact, you need 8,000 pounds of force in order to do it.
Really?
It really is quite bizarre. It's friction. And it's just replicated each time. I know, it is. It's so...
This time
if you loosen them...
This time it's me. This time it's personal.
Having a tantrum.
Still can't do it.
When is the present?
Oh, I'm not going to fall into that trap. Who's going to say it?
Well, it's not really a trap. It is a genuinely interesting question. I mean, there are different ways of trying to describe what the present might be, but let's talk about the present in terms of archaeology. Archaeologists actually have an acronym, BP, which means before present, and they can date the present. It's an exact date, January the 1st, 1950.
That's the present.
That, for archaeologists, and there's a very good reason for this, and you might be able to work it out. If you did, I'd be very impressed.
Is it plastics?
Not quite that.
Bakelite?
When archaeologists... No, archaeologists are interested in the distant past. And recently, in the last 100 or so years, certain techniques have enabled us to discover... I say us, I mean...
Carbon dating.
Carbon dating has allowed us to discover how old things are. Now, in the 1950s... Basically, they decided by January the 1st, 1950, we had so screwed up the atmosphere with nuclear testing that no carbon dating could be trusted after January the 1st, 1950. So that is known as the present.
See, these archaeologists need to learn a bit of physics, though. According to Einstein's theory of space and time, which is our best theory of space and time, there's no such thing as a present moment which spans the universe, or indeed even the Earth, or in fact even two people moving relative to each other.
It is absurd to think of an event that might be happening now in a galaxy and me doing this as being simultaneous. That has no meaning cosmically, does it?
You can swap the order of them as long as they're not causally connected. I mean, we don't know how time works at a very fundamental level, actually.
But time's arrow. I mean, I actually got my head around that a bit.
Yeah.
Because you don't need maths. If you think that everything's going forward and as it does, it decays.
Yes.
So then you understand entropy.
Yes.
I just look, for instance, all you need is an analogy to make that's pertinent to you. So in my case, all relationships. And then you realise, of course, you've got that perfect 18 months, and then they're dead.
The second law of sexual dynamics.
Yes, that's how according to me, that's how I extrapolate.
To make it statistically significant, though, you have to have an awful lot of relationships.
Oh, I do. And they really do also the law of entropy.
I've got my hands on the American nuclear trigger. Without putting yourselves to too much effort, see if you can tell me what the code is.
Secret trigger code.
The secret trigger code given to every American president between the years of 1960 and 1977.
I think that if you've got to remember it under pressure, and it would be a pressure situation, beginning the end of the world, it's got to be something quite simple.
It's 00000000. That literally was the code. 4 zeros twice, 8 zeros.
8 zeros.
I've got it back. And 8 zeros, that was the password.
Is that because you're just about... It's the end of the world, and you're going to go, oh.
Did the president, when he's testing this, did he do the chip and pin, you know, that little dance you do when the shopkeeper just looking at you and you kind of go, or pretend to press?
Well, you do a book, because I just do a cover.
No, because you not noticed polite shopkeepers now do this, which is what they call the penny chews. We just go like that and they do
I think it's pretend to do other numbers than the ones they're doing. Yeah.
So you're there with the lovely Debbie McGee going...
Do your number, but while you're doing your number, you say a different number slightly under your breath, so you look like a bit of an...
Well, that's like you're all rubbing your tummy and patting your head.
Like
yes, that is clever.
His number's 457.
But because the people I always most hated at school were those who, when they were writing in a test, did that.
Yeah.
As if one cared about what
That's
dribble they wrote.
because you're not an idiot.
Oh, no. It's just such a creepy way of behaving. So I always just do like that, grandly make sure that my number is...
I published mine in The Sun once. It went quite badly wrong.
That was very funny.
I couldn't understand it because they were complaining that everybody's bank details had been left on a train by a civil servant or somebody, and I thought, well, it doesn't make any difference because all they can do is make a deposit. So I published my number, and there you go, there's my bank account number. What are you going to do with that? And the Diabetic Society helped themselves to 500 quid.
What did Mussolini want Italians to eat to make them big and strong? Oh. He had a national propaganda day for this foodstuff, and he wanted Italians really to take to it in a big way.
Was it a vegetable? Some sort of...
Not quite a vegetable.
Nuts?
Not nuts, no.
Right, broccoli.
It's something Italians do eat. They have a specialist dish.
Ravioli?
Risotto, which is made from...
Rice.
Rice, exactly. And Mussolini wanted to kick Italians off the habit of eating pasta and to get them into the habit of eating rice. And Italians didn't take kindly for this at all. And so here are some paddy fields, some Italian ladies growing rice.
And singing while they do it.
And singing as they did it. And rather extraordinary, he had on his side the Futurists. You probably know about the Futurist movement, which was a bit like...
Not yet.
The Dadaists and the... not yet.
Very good.
It's almost too quick. Yeah. That was brilliant. Yeah, but the Futurists were an art movement, and they were pretty witty. And Filippo Tommaso Marinetti, who was one of the great Futurists, he said that pasta made Italians lethargic, pessimistic and sentimental. And this caused outrage, as I'm sure was his intention. He opened his own restaurant, and he had some extraordinary dishes. I mean, way ahead. I mean, ahead of Heston Blumenthal or anybody like that. Here, this is my favourite one. It's called aero food, all right? Pieces of olive, fennel and kumquat are eaten with the right hand, while the left hand caresses various pieces of sandpaper, velvet and silk. All the while, the diner is blasted with a giant fan and sprayed with the scent of carnation to the music of Wagner. Wow. Isn't that a dish? I think somebody should have the guts and the wit to open a Futurist restaurant again. There are other ones. There was chicken fiat. A chicken is roasted with a handful of ball bearings inside. When the flesh has fully absorbed the flavour of the mild steel balls, chicken is served with a garnish of whipped cream. And there's one called the Excited Pig. A whole salami skinned is cooked in strong espresso coffee and flavoured with eau de cologne.
I think you've been to motorway services.
What went up by 57% during the Blitz?
Oi, oi!
Yeah.
House prizes?
Was it Mother Brown's knees?
By 57%.
Oh, they were always up listening to the Cockneys during the Blitz. Yeah. Always up.
Yeah. The birth rate?
No.
Grave robbing?
Crime.
Oh.
Crime went up a huge amount during the Blitz.
Sorry, do you count crime as dropping bombs? Because if that...
No.
Because if that's listed as a crime, then there was a lot of that.
It's not a crime in actual law, in fact, to do that, unfortunately. Crime? But no, I'm talking about Londoners' crime, yeah. Mad Frankie Fraser actually said it was just terrible. It was a tragedy when Hitler surrendered, because wartime London was a criminal's paradise, is the way he put it. It was. I mean, all he had to do was get an ARP warden, you know, like Hodges in Dad's Army, Napoleon, all that. You put one of those on, and people just obey you, and a tin hat with a W on it. And people would actually help them load their cars with stuff they'd stolen. So, here, come here, help me load this car. They go, oh, yes, because you're a warden. I mean, it was
Are you suggesting that's what the Queen Mother was doing in the East End?
Not...
My granddad was one of those.
Was he an ARP warden?
Well, he says that.
Oh, I'm sure he was.
So was it mainly...
There was looting. It was looting, but there's also scams. There was one fellow called Handy who made a claim for his house being bombed out, for which he got £500, 19 times before they caught on to him. And, of course, ordinary people also were committing crimes through ration books. People who didn't think of themselves as criminals were, you know, black marketeering or involving themselves in the black market. But, yeah, generally speaking, it was a very good time to be a criminal because the police and everybody were concerned, obviously, with bombs falling on houses and people dying in incendiary bombs.
Is there truth in the... Because I read a thing about the... Well, the house would be bombed and people would be dead and then people would come and steal watches and things and things.
I'm afraid so, yeah.
It's really sort of grisly...
I'm afraid it is, because we think of it as our finest hour and, you know, the Blitz spirit and so on, but unfortunately there's always human nature, there's always another side to it. And, of course, there was a huge amount of bravery and camaraderie and communal spirit and so on, but there was also, sadly, the darker side. Ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived at our first destination, which is India. And what I want to know is which of these two gentlemen is going to make the better policeman?
Well, one of them's noticed the camera and is presumably about to arrest the photographer, and that seems to be what policemen do nowadays, so I'll go with that one.
Interesting.
I'll say the one...
he's got a biro.
Yeah, the one with the pen. I was writing notes down. And also the other one seems to be more concerned with how he's looking. He's smiling, chatting away. The other one's a bit more sober, more professional.
I think it's the guy in white behind them. He's plain clothes. He's mingling in, he's mingling.
You've missed the one detail that the state of Madhya Pradesh will actually pay policemen an extra 30 rupees a month to grow a moustache.
Really?
They consider that policemen are better. They're better in all kinds of ways. They're less intimidating, they work better with the community, they're more respected by the public. Yes. They're extraordinary.
It's bad news never ceases to disappoint, does it?
Well, it's not unique to India. British had pretty weird ideas about moustaches. In India, they're considered a sign of virility, but at the moment there's a north-south divide. In the north of India, it's rarer to have moustaches because in Bollywood and the cricket team, of course, the great heroes, tend not to have moustaches. But in the south, in Tamil cinema, they all have moustaches. Everybody has a moustache. And that is just considered absolutely...
It's Steve Wright in the afternoon, isn't it? I've never trusted a moustache. I'm pretty the other way.
That's very interesting, because in the British Army, in 1860 onwards, it was a regulation that every soldier had to have a moustache. You could be imprisoned for shaving your upper lip. Right up until the First World War, then you had the option of being able to shave off your moustache. So it's not unique to India.
Why did they suddenly in the First World War? Suddenly we're fighting total war. The moustache, that was clearly ridiculous, the moustache. So surely they'd think, if we need moustaches, we need them more than ever now. I think it should be beards.
There, they give you a certain, don't they? I think so. But this, yes, sort of moustache is going to win. Thank you. It's going to win a war, isn't it? But as you can see there, that's British soldiers, typical British soldiers, all of them moustache.
I'm just imagining, Stephen, that moustache is going to have its own website by the end of the...
How long do you imagine the longest moustache in the world might be?
24 feet.
Well, that's a little bit too much, actually.
OK.
It's
12.
It's 14 feet.
14 feet.
There it is. It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Wow.
I mean, this man makes a living out of it. He was in the film Octopussy, oddly enough. I can't remember what he did with his moustache, but it is... it's pretty impressive.
Do you distrust him?
Deeply. Very... If he turned up to do a bit of woodwork in the house, you know, and he just did, well, I measure 14 feet, well, I must be... I'd naturally feel...
You wouldn't want to stand at a urinal, would you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, dear.
Trailing around on the floor. He's ringing him out, that's what he's doing.
You might like to see a picture of some interesting moustaches there. But, and I have what you might call moustachabilia. These are real things used for people with moustaches that were used in the great moustache growing period. This is simply to drink. It's a little silver, rather beautifully made thing you put in a cup so that you can sip through here without, you know, without staining your moustache.
Keeps your moustache
Yeah, keeps your moustache nice and dry. Similarly with soup, you would want a soup spoon. You would just sip through that part there.
Oh.
So you take your soup like so, and you just like that. And again, I keep my moustache nice and dry.
Nice and dry.
What else have I got here? And this, you may remember that something...
Hadn't invented the straw.
Albert Finney. Albert Finney had something like this, didn't he, in Murder on the Orient Express. This is at night, when you wish to keep your moustache. No. And you put this round your ears, like there, and there.
What's that for, though? I mean, what... you say you want to keep your moustache. Keep your moustache from what?
Escaping.
Wild creatures of the night, I don't know. People who might come and nibble at it in the evenings.
There's a slight air of gimp about it.
There is. It's something a little unusual, isn't there?
The odd thing is that people who are using that spoon and that drink cover, they're people who don't want to look stupid. I don't want to look like a complete arse.
An idiot.
So excuse me when I get out all my paraphernalia for keeping soup off my moustache.
It is true. What you're saying is entirely true. What did Prince Albert invent?
Oh, a cock ring.
Yeah.
The comb over.
There was, bizarrely, there was something he actually did invent, which is not quite as intimate as the item of piercing jewellery that you referred to.
A cutlass.
No. He and Victoria married, they were very young, they were 20 years old, and she was very nervous, and she wrote a diary, as you may know, and it was quite an intimate diary, and she described the wedding night, the actual events, not the full physical details, but she described the experience as both gratifying and bewildering. Isn't that rather wonderful?
We've all been there.
So anyway, they enjoyed enough to have 9 children, and what he invented was a device that allowed them to lock the bedroom door from the bed, to give them marital privacy. Isn't that rather splendid? Oh. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Excuse me while I just...
Yeah. So, but he wore very tight trousers, and this myth grew up in the middle of the 20th century that he somehow anchored his penis to one side of his body or another by means of some sort of ring that was therefore able to pull it backwards so that it wasn't on show at parties because he was a Victorian and it would have been rude wearing such tight trousers. But there is no evidence for this. This woman stop staring at you?
What? She's...
Oi, oi!
Yep.
She's only human. Well, she's got her needs like anyone.
Are we being suggested to say because their eyes are following you around?
Yeah, they do. No,
I mean,
they actually... I mean, not they don't literally follow you around the room, but that experience is wherever you are in relation to that painting, she is looking at you.
What if you're behind her? Behind the painting? That only works on paintings of owls, surely.
There are other paintings. What's the most famous painting in the Wallace collection in London?
You know you're looking at the wrong person, don't you?
Yes.
Lee, you know what? Sometimes your eyes are following me around the room.
Certainly not.
I honestly thought someone was stood behind me then.
It's the... I think I might know this.
Yes,
Is the Cavalier? Is it the Cavalier?
Yeah, the Laughing Cavalier.
The Laughing Cavalier.
My friend's house. Yeah. Very good. That has the same quality as well. I mean, it's true of a lot of portraits.
Well, surely it's true of any painting where the person is looking at the artist. It's not unique to that painting, is it?
No, it isn't.
Any painting where the subject is looking towards the camera,
straight out is the point. The strange thing is, if you have a painting where someone's looking down, even if you get down to where the eye level is, it will never look at you.
You would look mad in an art gallery doing that. Look, he's looking at me!
Look at me, look at me!
Stand up,
But it doesn't look at you, that's the thing. You only look at you when they're looking straight out like
Well,
this.
it's not like because... that in Scooby-Doo, though. Scooby-Doo, right. There's
Yeah.
always somebody behind the painting, isn't there? And they really
that's
are.
true. And the
They
eyes
really
moving
are following you
in
around.
those horror films. Yeah, exactly.
It's like if you were to look at me now,
yes,
and I walked over there, and you carried on fixing your gaze forward, you wouldn't be looking at me. So you would think it would possibly be true of the painting, but you're not looking at the eyes of the painting. You're looking through the eyes of the artist. So wherever you stand, you're looking through the eyes of the artist, not through your own eyes. Good night.
That's rather beautifully put.
Except that Stephen is three-dimensional and the painting is two-dimensional.
Yes,
so
the
that
painting-
doesn't work.
But because I'm looking at you through my eyes, so if I walk over there, I'm still looking at you through my eyes, so it doesn't work. But I'm not looking at his eyes, the subject's eyes, am I? I'm looking through the artist's eyes, and they stay fixed at all times.
Sorry, can I just ask you...
So it's like bending light. It's like having a telescope that bends round, and you're doing that looking through the artist's eyes.
Do you know what? In a really
I'm here all
nice
weekend.
way, Lee, I'm going to say I don't think you've fully understood it.
Have you changed the word nice to patronising?
Well, I mean...
And you're very kind with the word fully, because I don't think I understood any of it, did I?
Shakespeare coined over 1,000 new words, but not all of them caught on. Here are some of the ones that didn't. See if you can put them into a sentence for me. Sweltery, quatch.
Quatch. I've got a sweltery quatch at the moment.
Already we're there, aren't we?
It happened when I put my kicky wickies on. The cock will be function. I've always been near-legged.
You're a boggler in those
I'll
times.
boggle my Carlot.
You're foxing. What happened to cockled boggler?
Car-lot, that's a thing. That's where people sell
That's a sexy
second-hand
garage.
cars.
Yes, well, that's true, actually.
It's just well
It has
ahead of its
taken
time.
way ahead of its time.
Yeah.
A boggler is a very clumsy burglar.
Or it's a burglar that can't believe the stuff he's getting his hands on. Look at this DVD player.
Well, he used it to mean a hesitator, one who boggles. I don't know if that was anything boggling the mind.
What is a kicky-wicky? Is that like a Russell Brand's version of a football or something?
It's an affectionate term for a wife. Oh, my dear Kicky-Wicky.
A kicky-wicky is not an affectionate term.
Domestic violence is a lot more acceptable.
Oh, the old smashy-washy. The old battery-wattery. Punchy-wunchy.
And a quatch. Or is it a quatch? It's actually an adjective, I think.
Fetch.
Quatch. Quatch means be a bit podgy, a bit quatch.
Oh, you're a bit quatchy.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Luckily, I'm wearing a surgical truss.
Plump, shall we say. Whappened, or wappened, is corrupt. That's never really caught on, is it? But look at the ones that did catch on. Here's just a small example of words that are first used in Shakespeare. Accessible, acutely assembled, barefaced, beguiling, critic, even-handed, eyeball, Frenchwoman, hunchbacked, neglected, overpower, promising, radiance, revealing, rose-cheeked, school-day synonymous, three-legged.
A French woman is a bit of a stretch. French woman. He invented it.
He invented taking the space out.
Yes, he may have done. Even-handed, bewitchment.
This is my wife. She is a thingamajig. I don't know. What can I call her? Oh, French woman. I think you're
She's a French woman.
French woman?
Of course, you can't be absolutely certain he invented all these because there may have been in use before, but he is often the first printed source we have for them.
He presumably had to have a pretty good idea that people would understand what he was going on about.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I've done it again.
Oh, no.
You know, this bit of rough is not behaving. I've said that before. Best-selling children's author has something to say on rabid dogs, suicide victims, slaughtering cattle, and how to tie your shoelaces.
Aye, aye, aye!
Yes, Steve.
Katie Price.
It's a wild stab in the dark.
That was the title of her second book.
Was it How to Slaughter Cattle?
Yeah.
Yeah. This has probably sold 150 million copies since its first publication.
Sorry, is it in the children's book?
It's a book written for children, yeah.
Look at the boys looking
Which
round
part
at the
of
dog's
Timmy
genitals.
are you looking at? He is. Dick. That's Dick there on the left.
Dick.
Dick, Anne and Julian.
Julian
and Dick is
Anne.
looking at Timmy's bits.
Girls, eyes forward. Boys going, hello.
You see, even he did like you. So,
It's an old English book?
published in, in the Edwardian era.
We're looking at the name of the book or the author.
The name of the author
Around that time,
was
Graham,
Robert,
Graham?
later Lord Baden-Powell.
Oh, the Scouting for Boys.
Scouting for Boys is the right answer.
Scouting for Boys. It's
Yes.
something on suicide.
It has an amazing entry on suicide. Maybe you'd like to hear it.
I would love to hear it.
When a man has gone so far as to attempt suicide, they don't count women for some reason, a scout should know what to do with him. In a case where the would-be suicide has taken poison, give milk and make him vomit. which is done by tickling the inside of the throat with a finger or a feather. In the case of hanging, cut down the body at once, taking care to support it with one arm while cutting the cord. A tenderfoot, which is scouting for novice...
Hard to make that sound very simple.
It does, doesn't it? A novice is sometimes inclined to be timid about handling an insensible man or dead man, or even seeing blood. Well, he won't be much use till he gets over such nonsense. There you are. Slaughtering cattle, advice to young boys on how to slaughter cattle. If you're a beginner in slaughtering with a knife, it's sometimes useful to first drop the animal insensible by a heavy blow with a big hammer or the back of a felling axe on top of the head.
Kindest thing to do, really.
Stopping a runaway horse?
He doesn't give advice on that, does he?
He does, yes.
Lie down.
That would stop the horse.
Oh, no, they don't tread on you.
No,
Oh, I know, play dead.
How would that stop the horse?
I'm thinking of ferocious grizzly bear again, aren't I?
And what you don't do is stand in front of it waving your arms. That's the mistake to make. What you should do is go to the side and basically just ease it towards the side of a wall or the side of a house.
Oh, yeah.
And then catch
Well,
the
yeah. When it's running,
Yeah.
you ease a running horse to the side of a wall. Yeah? Don't worry, lads, I'll just ease this running horse to the side of a wall.
You'll see you on the corner of its eye, and it will be pushed towards, and it will slow it down naturally, according to Baden-Powell.
Give us a hand. I can't. Uncle Pete's hung himself.
What about saving someone who's fallen in front of a train?
Oh, don't.
Oh, well, I know this. You ease the train up against the wall.
If the train is very close, lie flat between the rails, make the man do the same till the train passes over, while everyone else will be running about screaming and excited and doing nothing.
You're supposed to jump on the track with him?
Yeah.
And push his head down?
Yeah, keep
yes,
lie
I'm going to
flat.
do
Does
that.
that work, though? Is there such a big gap between the wheels that
some
you...
people does in movies, but I wouldn't be the one to try it.
That'd be great if you hung yourself and then a scout cut you down and you went, oh, well, don't worry, I'll jump under a train.
And again...
He's here again! Hi, mate.
If by some terrible, terrible concatenation of circumstances, both my co-pilot and I on this flight were suddenly taken ill, how would you land this plane?
Can't they just land themselves on an instrument's landing?
Can't you? I'd stop reading the Kindle on the steering wheel.
That would be a wise start, yes.
Don't you radio... There's the co-pilot slumped, normally.
Yes.
In these situations.
Yeah, someone talks you in.
And somebody talks you in?
That's what happens in the movies, definitely, isn't it?
Yes. Like Robert Duvall probably would be good.
Yes.
That's who I'd ring.
Or Lloyd Bridges in the case of Airplane, the movie.
Perfect choice.
Yeah.
Yes. Presumably there are legal problems with someone talking you down, though, because you could then subsequently sue if it was interpreted by your relatives that you were given bad advice. So probably these days the air traffic controller would refuse to give advice and would say, "I'm sorry, we're not covered for my saying."
That's right. You'd have to sign a waiver and sort of text it to them, and then they would insurance would cover you to be talked down.
It is a minefield. Extraordinarily and happily, it has never occurred in commercial airline travel history that someone has been, as it were, oh, gosh, can anyone fly this plane because the pilot and co-pilot are ill or dead? It's never actually happened, but it would be fraught with difficulty. They have tried various simulations. For example, those with American civil private pilot licenses in America who can fly light planes were invited onto simulators of big jets. Yeah. And one of them couldn't even operate the seat that moved him towards the control. Another one turned the radio off. Another one turned off the autopilot and instantly crashed the plane. So the fact is, it's incredibly difficult.
Stephen, am I allowed to say that in your uniform how incredibly unlike a pilot you look?
So what do I look like instead? Be brutal, be frank.
No, I think you'd be the chap who calls himself the bursar. Who comes round, he's got a big leather wallet and takes money for duty-free.
Yeah, calls himself the bursar.
Yeah.
Yes.
He calls himself the bursar?
Yes, I think he does, yeah.
Or the purser.
The purser.
The bursar is like the one that does the money for a...
Public school.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Well, what kind of planes are you flying on?
Yeah.
Yes, the bursar will be collecting money for the end of term jamboree.
Here on a Charterhouse Air.
Yeah.
The bursar with the trolley, and then with the drinks, the groundsman.
Anyway, the fact is it's fraught with difficulty. The first problem you would have is simply getting into the cockpit, because since 9/11, of course, cockpits are locked. And if the pilot and the co-pilot were truly too ill to be able to fly, they may well be too ill even to let you in to the cockpit. But,
do they have a secret knock?
It's a lovely thought.
When they go and give them their lunch, though, surely they have to get in.
Yes.
So they must have a coded knock or something, like, it's me. I've got your lunch. Something like that, and they go, oh, must be the lunch.
It must be, it must be to do with the lunch. The lunch is. Now, why do I say lunch is?
Because there's more than one.
But why is there more? You are accruing points at a fantastic rate.
God, I tell you what.
Yes, there are more than one. But why would there be more than one lunch? Why would that?
They have to eat different meals.
Yes, the pilot and the co-pilot must eat different meals.
Oh, in case one of them gets botulism.
Exactly, so that if one is by accident poisoned or whatever. And in the case of extra long-haul flights, there are 3 pilots, not 2.
So you can't get into the cockpit. It's very, very dangerous. Never been done.
Yeah,
So...
and if it was on autopilot, you'd be able, obviously, to fly level and it would continue. But once you got into the landing situation, yes, the kind of film scenario would take over whereby you would be told how to operate the flaps and at what speed. But there are so many variables in terms of glide path and vertical and horizontal axes and so on. It really is extraordinarily difficult. There is an auto-land system.
There's no way of flying it remotely, then, from the ground? Like with just somebody with a Wii or something, you know.
I don't know. Maybe one day.
Someone comes in the room.
What? Why?
It's a horrifying thought, but fortunately, as I say, it never has yet happened in major commercial air travel. Which international head of state snubbed Jesse Owens after his triumph at the 1936 Olympics?
Oh, go on.
Yes, Jack.
Hitler.
Oddly enough, it's not true. It's what the whole world thinks, but it isn't true. And we know this from no greater source than Jesse Owens himself. In fact, it's a really rather sad and a very typically, I'm afraid, unfortunate story. Jesse Owens, as you probably know, won 4 gold medals at the 1936 Berlin Olympics. The Olympics were stage managed, of course, by Hitler. Now, on the first day, Hitler congratulated only German winners. And someone said to him that he should either congratulate all the winners or none of them. So he said, well, in that case, I won't congratulate any winners. So as it happens, he didn't personally congratulate... He didn't personally congratulate Jesse Owens. Were you looking at that?
The bloke on the far right is just going like that at
That bloke on the far right
To be fair,
is called Hermann Goering.
I think surely they're all on the far right.
They're taking bets on how high the high jump was going to go.
The one on Hitler's left thinking I didn't get the memo. I didn't.
How to dress. Well, no, it is rather extraordinary. As I say, Hitler decided on the second day that he wouldn't congratulate anyone. So he didn't snub Jesse Owens at all. In fact, according to Jesse Owens, he said, when I passed the Chancellor, he arose, waved his hand at me, and I waved back at him. Hitler didn't snub me. It was... Who snubbed him?
So Hitler wasn't such a bad guy after all.
No, it's not that. It's not that.
The jury's still out.
Hitler is, we know, is bad. It just so happened he didn't snub Jesse Owens.
King of England.
No, FDR.
Oh, bastard.
The president of his own country. Now, it's a terrible story here. It was FDR who snubbed me. The president didn't even send me a telegram. He won 4 gold medals. When I came back to my native country, after all the stories about Hitler, I couldn't ride in the front of the bus. I had to go to the back door. I wasn't invited to shake hands with Hitler, but I certainly wasn't invited to the White House to shake hands with the president either. He had to use the goods lift of the Waldorf Astoria to get into the reception for returning US athletes, as he wasn't allowed to use the front door.
So Sammy Davis Jr. couldn't go in the front door of the hotels in Vegas where he was performing.
I know. It is simply astonishing.
He had to go through the kitchen.
Yeah. That still happens to me, though, sometimes.
What did cricketer Thomas White invent in 1771?
The Yorker.
The Yorker?
Yeah.
To hear a German say the Yorker...
I don't know what it means.
It's a fully pitched up ball, but it's a great to hear a German
What's googly then?
Yeah. Googly is... A googly is a leg spinner's offspin. It's disguised. It's
Comes
very
on the back.
common.
And how does the Duck vs. Lewis method work?
Oh, nobody knows that. That's far too complicated. No, he didn't invent any particular type of bowling or of batting, but he looked at the laws of cricket and he noted that there was a rather glaring omission, and he thought he thought, splendid.
Oh, the big bat. Did he have the big bat?
Yes, he came with a bat that was wider than the wicket. This enormous bat. It was Chertsey versus Hambledon, which is the equivalent of Surrey versus Hampshire. So after 1774, they incorporated a law that said a bat must be no wider than 4.5 inches. But this fellow, Thomas White, I suppose you could call him a cheat, but he was within the laws of the game as they were at the time. And there were others. There's an American footballer called Lester Hayes. Does that ring any bells with you? Of the Oakland Raiders, who had such success as a catcher in the late 70s that he was the Defensive Player of the Year. But the reason was that he covered his hands and gloves with an adhesive called Stickum. And he actually admitted, he said, without Stickum, I couldn't catch a cold in Antarctica.
But that's so clearly cheating. They must have spotted
Well, there was no rule against
There was no rule.
They had to introduce one, which there now is. There was a jockey at Belmont in New York who, in 1923, died of a heart attack when on a horse and won. The horse won.
Oh, right.
And, of course, the bookies didn't want to pay out. But there was a rule that said the jockey had to be in the saddle. There was no rule that said he had to be alive.
Well, he was a brilliant jockey, then, if he clung on even though he was dead.
Exactly. Pretty amazing.
Keep going!
So the lucky punters were paid out. Where was Louise Brown conceived? Yes.
In a test tube. Why did the skin coming out my mouth? Like, what you fool?
Louise Brown was indeed the world's first in vitro fertilised baby.
She wasn't.
But it wasn't a test tube, it was a petri dish.
So she's a fraud. She's been telling everybody she's the first
She never
test tube
claimed
baby.
to be.
She's
The
the
news-
first petri dish baby.
The news claimed she was the first test tube baby. There's another Louise Brown, who's 91 years old and lives in the Stewartry of Dumfries and Galloway, who has a record, we think, in the United Kingdom, which is rather extraordinary. There's no way you could possibly guess it.
It's got to be the oldest something or other.
Well, she...
Oh, is it too late for this?
No, we definitely know.
We could ask her.
We could ask her. She's still alive.
She doesn't know.
We think she's the most prolific library book borrower in the country. She has read...
That's too much of a leap from
Yeah, it is.
fertilisation.
It just happens to be the same name. She's read just under 25,000 books.
Well, she says that. She's borrowed them.
No, but that... 12 a week. 12 a week, and she's never once had a late fine.
That probably proves that she doesn't read them, the very fact she gets them back on time.
I think it's rather charming. They're mostly Mills and Boon romances, war stories and historical dramas. But that's it, 12 books.
Barbara Cartland was writing that many.
Yes, exactly. Just
for Louise to keep reading.
Yeah. I was going to say if Louise is watching, but she isn't. She's reading a book. But if Louise is watching, we salute her in the world of dying libraries. What were the first words spoken from the surface of the moon? How appropriate, Sean.
Hello? Can you hear me? It was...
It was the clangers, was it?
It's the
who got there
clangers.
first.
But it wasn't one small step for man, because he hadn't gone on yet.
Very true. Very good. So what else was it?
Well, he was like, come on down, Neil, it's fine. It's fine, don't worry about it. What's the big deal?
Golf club.
Yeah.
Great to be here in Philadelphia. I mean, the moon.
Well, let's sort out who said it. Who said the first human words uttered on the surface of the moon?
Neil Armstrong.
No.
Buzz Aldrin.
Yes, it was Buzz. He was in charge of the steering of the module as it landed, and 102 hours, 45 minutes and 25 seconds in, he was saying 4 forward, 4 forward, drifting to the right a little. That's good, that's good. Something garbled, and then contact light. And the contact light that showed they had landed was on. Those were the first words spoken. Not the eagle has landed, and certainly not small
This
step.
is the moon. This is the end of the line. Please. Please make sure you have all your bags and all your personal possessions.
What do you know about Buzz Aldrin otherwise?
Dad had a sense of humour.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, he called him Buzz.
Ah, but he didn't. He called him Edward Eugene Aldrin Jr.
Yes.
His sister...
I think I'm right, actually.
His sister called him Buzz, because she couldn't say brother, so she'd say Buzzer, and he became Buzz. He eventually made it his legal name.
He had the hand of a monkey.
Very good. What was his mother's maiden name? Surely you know that.
Smith, Brown, Jones.
Moon. Moon is the right answer. Well done.
Did you know that?
We've got this little example of a sort of optical illusion here. So if you photograph it in the right way, as you're about to see, the eye plays extraordinary tricks on you. So there it is Einstein. There he is in profile.
Wow.
And there's the inverted bit, but hello.
Oh,
Your eye tells you
wow.
that's poking outwards, and yet it isn't. That's the inside bit. And your eye refuses to believe it until you get to that.
That's great.
Oh, you're twisting my melon, man.
Isn't that extraordinary?
Why does it do that? Why?
Well, it does that because your brain is programmed to recognise human faces. And it's one of the first things babies do is look at faces. And you expect to see a face. And even though you know it isn't a real face, your brain fills in the...
I did it again.
It's an astonishing illusion.
Does this, Stephen, does it only work with Einstein? Would it work with another man?
It would work with any human being. It is really creepy. It's amazing, isn't it?
But it's done it. I can't believe it did it the same trick twice.
I know, the point is...
So, listen, we're not going to fall for it this time.
And yes...
OK. No way. Got 3 times on the run.
Outside. This is going to be inside, Lee. Inside. How do you do it?
Wow.
How do you do it?
It's so clever, isn't it?
He's so clever.
It is literally... We literally filmed this. I mean, you can see... That's all it is.
This is a great trick. I might cut my head in half and scoop out my brain.
What a wonderful thing. It would make the most wonderful blancmange or something, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it? Right. Are we going to bother with the rest of the show? Because I could happily just... I mean, it's lovely chatting and everything, and I love what we do, but let's just...
You're hypnotised.
Have you got any others apart from Einstein?
No, I tell you what we can do. We can make the Queen happy or sad.
Oh.
We've got a £5 note. You can do this with your own £5 notes, but we'll give you the demonstration.
OK.
There it is. You do a little fold. Why would you swallow a pill made of a poisonous metalloid? Yes.
Would it be because you got really pissed one night and then you woke up the next morning and realised you were next to Michael Winner in bed?
Well, oddly enough, until you got to that last point, one of the uses of that poisonous metalloid was as a morning-after pill, but its other use was for the other end of the body. It's a metalloid called Antimony, and it's a poison. But it was popular in the Middle Ages as a pill because it's very good for constipation. The weird thing about it is you'd make a pill of antimony, because it's metalloid, it'd be like... It would pass through the body. You would then rummage through your leavings and wash it and use it again.
Rummage through your leavings.
Wasn't quite sure how to put it.
You're certainly going to use that again, though. I like that one a lot.
And these things would get handed on from father to son through generations, and they'd use the same one because it was so rare.
Father's leavings and his father's leavings.
This pill was good enough for your great-grandfather.
So that's the earliest example of a repeat prescription.
Yes. Very good.
Hundreds of years.
Absolutely. But the other use of it was an antimony cup, where you would pour wine into it overnight when you'd had a large evening, and then in the morning you'd take the wine that had been soaked in this antimony cup, as it were, and it would make you vomit instantly. So it was used as an emetic. So it was just really...
So what is it? It's a naturally occurring...
Yes, it's an element.
And it's an irritant, presumably? Because there's a mnemonic for remembering laxatives, which is there are bulkers, lubricants, irritants, softeners and explosives. And explosives work like... they work like cholera. You've got to sort of stick them up your bum. That's
right.
Technical.
Or suppository, as we comedians say. Yes. So that's for a really serious case of being stuffed up.
Yeah, proper phosphate enema rocket fuel
Wow.
on a skateboard.
In ancient Egypt, there was a doctor whose specialised function was to administer enemas to the pharaoh. He was known as the Necropants, which literally translates as shepherd of the anus. It's an official job. Rather pleasing.
So with the crook, you mean?
It's obviously not a natural thing. Animals don't pump warm water up their arses, do they? It doesn't seem to happen in nature in any way that we know of. How did it come about?
Well, they are very popular with quacks. I think there's something quite attractive about how transgressive it is to squirt a lot of something up your bum that makes pretend doctors feel like real doctors. But there was a guy, John Harvey Kellogg, the man behind the man behind the cornflake.
Yes.
Yeah. So he had this this big kind of quack clinic that he ran, where the moment that you arrived, you had to make a visit to a man called the Rear Admiral, who would bend you over and fill you with fresh yoghurt, and then you would poo that out, and then you'd be ready to crack on with your detox.
And they would deal with your thrush at the same time.
What time's this show going out? Will people be...
Well, I mean, it is almost the most kind of basic fact about us all is that we poo. And also that we are, as we age, supposedly, we get more obsessed by it. I mean, it's sort of all you've got left, really, isn't it? And there are stories of nurses who get sent stools by grateful patients. You must have heard those stories, eh?
They're not necessarily grateful.
It's an expression of love.
No idea why, but that habit has followed me through into my comedy career.
There was a chap recently who tried to kill somebody by... he packed his anus with explosives, and it was a Middle East prince, I can't remember which one, but he showed up and went... And his plan was, shake the guy by the hand and then trigger it. But unfortunately, the body is very good at absorbing explosions. That's why, heroic acts where people jump onto hand grenades and stuff. So all that happened was he shook this prince by the hand, the bomb went off, and he just sort of bounced up in the air slightly and then crumpled to his knees. And the prince, like any sort of royal, just went, very good.
Oh, dear, oh, dear. Well, that's antimony. As I say, antimony pills were quite literally passed down through the family. Sigmund Freud, Mark Twain, Henry James, a loony from Newcastle, and the Holy Ghost have in common.
Well, Mark Twain, I know, had a link, but I don't know about the others. He was sceptical about Shakespeare because he thought that a toff wrote it. He didn't believe that a normal boy from Stratford could write.
Right.
Could write
he
properly.
was what you might call exactly a Shakespearean skeptic, as were the others. That's to say, Sigmund Freud also believed that, and Henry James, and the Professor Looney, that was unfortunately his name, though I believe it was pronounced Loney, from Newcastle, who wrote a book in 1920 called Shakespeare Identified. There was this whole movement, started in the 19th century, really, with the idea that it might have been Francis Bacon who wrote the works of Shakespeare. There was particularly a woman called Delia Bacon, who was an American and was completely insane, really. She came over to England and wrote a 625-page book.
God.
In which she didn't even mention the name Bacon. And then when she died, she claimed she was the Holy Spirit.
She claimed she was the Holy Spirit?
Yes. So the Holy Spirit, if she was right, also doesn't believe Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare. So if Bacon was one candidate, there are two other main candidates.
Oh, hang on. What was it?
Marlowe.
Christopher Marlowe.
Christopher Marlowe is one candidate. But the most popular
Earl
one...
of Oxford?
The Earl of Oxford is, yes, indeed, Edward de Vere.
Is that Edward de Vere?
That's Edward de Vere.
Wow. There's a lot going on there, isn't there?
There is, isn't there?
How does he keep that hat on?
It's sort of Kate Blanchett with a moustache.
But, there are serious people. I mean, Freud liked the fact that he lost his father early on, like Hamlet, because, of course, he had an Oedipus complex theory about Hamlet, Freud, so he liked that idea. Who else? Looney invented a rather fanciful scenario because the Earl of Oxford died in 1604 and Shakespeare carried on writing plays many years after that. So...
that might almost be the point at which to abandon the theory.
Yeah, you'd think. Instead of which he claimed that before dying he'd left a whole sheaf of plays and that his servant, Shakespeare, then just produced them one after the other.
Isn't the Tempest written sort of 4 or 5 years after he died? 6 years, maybe, even after he died, referencing sort of stuff of the time. So after De Vere's dead.
Yes, quite.
He probably just left insert topical gag here.
Yeah, that's right. But there are Mark Rylance and Derek Jacobi, both supreme actors, and they both believe that it was the Earl of Oxford. There isn't a shred of evidence, as far as I can see.
It sort of doesn't matter. On the basis that what Shakespeare means to people is the guy that wrote those plays. And so if the guy that wrote those plays is a different guy that wrote those plays, that's still what a great guy.
Yes.
It's not an earth-shattering conspiracy, really, is it? That
No.
It isn't him.
Over 5,000 books on the subject, incredibly. Yeah, I know, it's extraordinary.
Yeah, no scrap of evidence.
Not real evidence, to be honest. No, it's just speculation. And the odd thing is, they often say, oh, we know so little about Shakespeare. There are very, very few people of the Elizabethan era about whom we know more. I mean, Ben Jonson, for example, who was a very famous playwright. We don't even know where Ben Jonson was born or how many children he had.
If other people were writing the plays, why didn't they say so at the time?
Well, quite. I mean,
that's the bit I don't understand. It always seems to go, he didn't write all that. Wouldn't it have come out if other people had...
Yeah, but if it was Ben Jonson or any of those others, jolly good luck to them, I say.
Was it just because he wasn't posh? Does it just come? Does it
That
come down to
is
basic
kind of
class
snobbery.
system?
They think, well, he was just this kid from Warwickshire and he was a woodlander, and but in fact, his father was a glover, which is a perfectly decent trade, as you say, and he went to the grammar school there, almost certainly. And
He's sort of, you'd think, exactly as far up the society as you'd expect a major writer to be.
Yes.
Not, it's not like now the best novels are written by the Duke of Westminster.
No. Now, his vocabulary. How many words do you think he used? I'm not counting repeats. He used a lot, obviously.
Yeah. Dagger, murder...
This could take us a long time, yes.
Well, we've got to start somewhere.
You've got to start somewhere, you're right. Yeah.
5,000.
Yeah. They're 20,000 words. 20,000 words. And how does that compare to the average vocabulary of a Briton, would we say, roughly? That we
4 times as much.
No, half as much. Half as much. Less. Surprisingly, yes. I mean, we're not saying that Shakespeare used every word he knew in his books. I'm sure he left lots out. I don't remember the word clitoris.
He didn't use hard drive.
I think it's in the second folio.
Oh, it might be. So it's about half that of the average modern English person's vocabulary, because obviously he didn't have certain words to call on, like, texting or vajazzle or whatever. But on the other hand, he did have, guerdon and bodkin and fardel, which we don't use so much.
Yoghurt,
Yoghurt. I don't suppose Shakespeare knew what yoghurt was.
Broadband.
Broadband. There are a lot of words. In The Sun, David Crystal, who's a well-known linguistic fellow, and he estimates that there would be about 6,000 words in any complete issue of The Sun, whereas the King James Bible has just 8,000. So this idea that we're all dumbed down to a lower vocabulary is not necessarily. Why did the colonels-in-chief of the Royal Dragoons and the First King's Dragoon Guards fail to turn up for duty at the start of the First World War?
They were entwined in an embrace. Only now can we reveal the truth.
It was one of those embarrassing things about...
Oh, I know.
Yes, go on.
Because it was Kaiser Bill.
Yes. Kaiser Bill was, in fact, the colonel-in-chief of the Royal Dragoons, and Franz Joseph the Habsburgs was the colonel-in-chief of the King's Dragoons. So
That's a security risk.
It was a bit, wasn't it? But we carried on doing this.
If it turned out that Osama bin Laden was actually, an admiral of the fleet, that would have been a nightmare.
We appointed Emperor Hirohito a field marshal in 1930, so we carried on doing this. So obviously there was a bit of embarrassment to begin with when they had to go to war with their own colonel-in-chief. It was eventually sorted out, and we pretty much spanked their botties. We pretty much did.
After only 4 years of carnage.
Yes, that's right.